expressing the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, this 1972 version of Srimad Bhagavad Gītā as it is a guide, as if sitting near a teacher to aid listening to the song by God. Therefore this 700-verse Holy Scripture is also known as the Gita Upanishad. The difference is that this contains no mundane speculation. Instead it has pure, unadulterated devotion from an unbroken disciplic succession. Currently, due to biodegradable record, the West mundanely date this to 4,000 years, but traditionally it's 5,200, spoken on the battlefield of World War Zero. Being a small part of the Mahabharata, chapter 6, part 23 to 40, or add 2 pages, this Gita is also known as Ishvara, Ananta, Hari, or by its scribe, this cycle, Vyasa. Its 18 chapters have been translated over 2,000 times, while this one, up to just 2014, has been printed 23 million times in 59 languages. Unhappy with over 1,000 changes in 1983, Krishna Books Incorporated reprinted this original Macmillan Complete edition. Again, the illustrations plus original Sanskrit were allowed. The artists for all these plates are unknown, considered just devotees, under instruction from Abhay Charanda Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON and the greatest exponent of Krishna consciousness in the Western world. I add that his body died 5 years after this publication, at the age of 81. This is his spiritual master, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaja, the foremost scholar and devotee in the recent age. Again, I'm working without diacritics, but his spiritual master, Srila Gaura Kisoradas Babaji Maharaja, then his spiritual master, Srila Thakur Bhakti Vinode, the pioneer of the program to benedict the entire world with Krishna consciousness. Before I titled the first plate of the king Dhritarashtra, inquiring from Sanjaya about the events of the battle, I can give some background information about the artists involved. One was even briefly accommodated at my father's house, starting from scratch, without internet. For years they were flown to museums and temples around the world to experience the style of the greatest classical artists. There's no better way to ingrain the ancient style of architecture and fashion than being there or face to face with priceless objects, imitating the masters. They were also strict devotees, guided by otherworldly pointers of what a depicted character should look like. This had been meditated upon. Who would have a beard or a mustache, or even what clothes and styles they wore? Everything had a significance. I quote from the respective Chapter 1, Text 1. King Dhritarashtra said,
O Sanjaya, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight?
O king, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and began to speak the following words. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Here in this army there are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. There are also great fighters like Yuyudhana, Virata, and Drupada. Also great heroic, powerful fighters like Drashtaketu, Jakitana, Kathiraja, Purujit, Kuntiboja, and Saibya. And now for purports that really help to understand what's going on. Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly, with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna, and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession, without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all the scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science, because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that the philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharma Kshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya,
"What did my sons and the sons of Pandu do?"
He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield, because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship. Even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the son of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra, and so on. Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belonged to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from his family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out. So it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son Duryodhana and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhishthira would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharma Kshetra and Kurukshetra, apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that he could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjaya could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. He wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus he warned him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief Dronacharya to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with the king Drupada, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice, by which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet, as a liberal Brahmana, he did not want to hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Draupadi, Drishtadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now, on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, Drishtadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for their military phalanx. After having learned the art from Dronacharya, Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in battle against the Pandavas, who were also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such leniency in the fight would lead to defeat. Even though Drishtadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there were many others who were the cause of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them. Duryodhana will then mention the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana, Ashvatthama is the son of Dronacharya, and Saumadati, or Borishrava, is the son of the king of the Balikas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, as he was born of Kanti before her marriage with King Pandu. Karpacharya married the twin sister of Dronacharya. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Kshiravarma, Shalya, etc., all will be determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kurukshetra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. End of purport. Now Chapter 1. Text 6.
There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra, and the son of Draupadi. All these warriors are great
chariot fighters, O best of the Brahmanas. For your information, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. There are personalities like yourself, Bhishma, Karna, Karpa, Ashvatthama, Vikarna, and the son of Samadatta called Borishrava, who are always victorious in battle. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with the different kinds of weapons, and all are experienced in military science. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. End of text 10. Now purport. So herein an estimation of comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima, who is like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishmadeva was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man. So everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in the fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes would not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory over the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishmadeva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishmadeva and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to strip naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that all such affection would now be completely given up by them, as was customary during the gambling performances. End of purport. Now text 11.
Now all of you must give full support to your grandfather Bhishma, standing at your respective strategic point in the phalanx of the army.
Text 12 and 13. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, like the sound of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. After that, the conch shells, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Purport. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of the grandson Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson Duryodhana that he had no chance of victory in the battle, because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains would be spared in that connection. Text 14. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. Purport. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishmadeva, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side, because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayastu Pandu Putranam Yasam Pakshe Janardana. Victory is always the persons like the sons of Pandu, because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there, because the goddess of fortune never lives alone with her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu, or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated was donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides, wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Text 15. Then Lord Krishna blew his conch shell, called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell, called Paundram. Purport. Lord Krishna is referred to as Hrishikesa in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. The living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity, and in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Hrishikesa. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudana because he killed the demon of name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudeva because he appeared as the son of Vasudeva. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yasoda Nandana because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yasoda at Vrindavana. His name is Parthasarathi because he worked as charioteer of his friend Arjuna. Similarly, his name is Hrishikesa because he gave direction to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Vargodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hidimba. So, the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there was no such credits, nor the presence of the Lord Krishna, the supreme director, nor that of the goddess of fortune. So they were predestined to lose this battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells. Texts 16 to 18. King Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananti Vijaya, and Nakula and Sahadeva blew the Sagosa and Manipushbaka. The great archer, the king of Kasi, the great fighter Sikandi, Drishtadyumna, Virata, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupada, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as their son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective conch shells. Purport. Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavouring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including kings from many states of the world. All were present there, and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra, because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Text 19. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious, and thus, vibrating both in the sky and on the earth, it shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Purport. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned, but in this particular verse it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity.